everybody, BB here, and I'm back with another fun little tutorial. This time I'm in a small handmade journal with just plain white pages, and the size of these pages are 5 by 5, so it's a really nice manageable size for me to work in. And my theme overall for this journal is neutrals, with some earthy tones, but then mainly like collage pieces, things like that. So sometimes it is super helpful to pick an overall theme for your journal if that's going to help you get started. Sometimes restrictions can feel too restricting. So having a theme, if that's going to stop you from creating, please don't make one for yourself. It is not necessary. But I had so many ideas. So sometimes it is really nice for me to be able to categorize them into different journals and different themes. And that just helps me to create. So I'm starting out here and I just wanted to get some background pattern and things happening on the page. So pencil scribbles, I have colored pencil there. And then also my black China marker, just some repetitive shapes happening. Nothing perfect or uniform, but just some stuff coming through to the background. My reason for doing this before even the paint or the collage is I don't want those art marks to just sit on top. Sometimes it's really fun to have those interesting layers pop through from underneath. Half of this will all be covered later on. So that's not really my main concern as I'm making the marks to have them all show, but just to have some layered interest happening. Plus, starting out with a pencil scribble is such an easy way to loosen up your mind, get rid of that blank page fear, especially when you're working on blank white pages like I'm working in on this journal. I don't need to be more intimidated to start than I already am. So that really helps me to get started and jump right in. So now I'm going with more of the theme of the journal, those neutral collage elements. And I just picked out a few scrap pieces that I have laying around. And I love little journals like this because they're perfect to use up some of those scraps. I have a tendency to save everything. And so whenever I can find ways that are fun to use the pieces I have, I get really excited and want to use them. So I'm just using the standard glue stick that I always use to glue down some of these pieces. So my goal will not be to cover this entire page, but just put down a few pieces that help with the movement of the spread. Now, in this video, I only work on the left side of the page. Normally when I work on a full 2-page spread at one time. And for this, I wanted to just see what it was like to work on one side. Now, later on the same day that I'm working here, I do end up doing the other side because I just want it all to flow together, but I was gonna try to have them not match, but they end up looking really good together. So I'm actually gonna show you part 2 next week, and that will be the right side of the spread. And then I'll show you how to bring the entire 2 pages together if you wanna work on them separately like I do here. So it's just another way of thinking, another way of working. You don't always have to do both pages simultaneously. You can do them different days, you can do them apart and still bring them together in a cohesive manner. So I have a lot of soft neutrals happening, but having something with a little bit extra kick would be nice. And so this black and white, it's actually washi tape. It's the end of the roll. So I needed to use some glue to stick that on. And then I have a few pieces of just textiles here. And these ones happen to be from an old sweater. So I'm recycling those to use further in my artwork. And I have different vintage papers that fit really well with this color scheme. This is just a small little tidbit from an old ledger. And I'm just thinking about layering things up and having some nice movement. Now you can see when I'm working on the left side of the page, there's still quite a bit of white space, which for me is always a good goal for me to have because I do have the tendency to really cover things up. Now, if you do cover things up, you can always try to come back in and add more of that calm space back in, but it is definitely a challenge for me to just try to leave more of that space up front. So I am happy with the amount that has been left. So now with that little piece of fabric, the two pieces that I layered together, some lace and some knit fabric. I had a thread already threaded on a needle, and it's only a little bit here, but that's okay. It's going to be enough just to add little stitches. And sometimes it's fun to think of stitches as art marks. So I'm just adding art marks on top of this fabric. And then I'll go ahead and glue this down onto the paper. So that is one of my best tricks when it comes to stitching in your art journals. I don't always stitch through the entire page where it's going to show through to the back side. On this, I'm just stitching through the element itself, and then I'll use some strong adhesive to put that down so it stays on the page. Since it's such a small piece and it's not really holding anything particularly with the stitches, I'm not even going to worry about tying it off. It was such a small strand of thread to start with, so I'll just leave that hanging. I love the loose look of that. And then I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac glue and glue that down. And that's the end of this one. It went really quick. I'm really happy with it. So make sure to stay tuned for part 2, which is the right side of the page. Next week, I'll be releasing that video. And of course, I link the supplies that I use down below. If you're not already following me, subscribe to my channel, please make sure to do so. It really helps me out a lot. And some final touches here, bringing in a few of those more bold marks that I did at the beginning with the black China marker onto the top. So we really get a nice integration from the very first layers to the last layers. I will see you next week for part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you soon.